Hello, thank you for tuning in to AWANI Review. My name is Cynthia Ng. Today we are delving into the topic of co-working space. So recently, WeWork, the startup that in a way founded or pioneered the term co-working space or flexible offices, filed for bankruptcy protection in the US. Now, while the repercussions are limited to the US and Canada at this point in time, what does the fallout of WeWork tell us about the health of the industry, and what does it say about the demand for co-working spaces globally? So joining me today to share their thoughts on this and also to talk a bit more about the growth of their own co-working company, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Ping. She's the CEO of WORQ, and as well as Andrew over there, we have also CFO of WORQ, and both of them are co-founders of WORQ. First of all, Stephanie, great to see you again. Thank you for having me back at your other location. The last time we met was at Taman Tun, I think, PDDI.
Yeah.
So if I can just start with what I've introduced just now during the beginning of the show, which is WeWork, the WeWork saga, right? Maybe you can share your thoughts about what happened, what led to the collapse of WeWork.
WeWork actually started this whole co-working space trend, and I think we have to give them credit for that, which is that they made offices, Google-like offices, available on a shared basis globally, and they set the stage for that industry. But I think what happened was that they grew very aggressively, and they had much more of a focus on revenue and amount of space grown rather than the fundamentals like profitability, occupancy. And making sure that every single one of their outlet works and that they have a model that can scale sustainably. And that's what we see the repercussions of happening now, which is that if you grow at an unsustainable way, then you will be incurring a lot of difficulties. It is, in a way, I wouldn't say normal, but it's an industry going through the trends of the business cycle. Every industry that is young will grow from fledgling to growth to maturity and all the stages in between. And that's what's happening, whereby when an industry is new, and it will have entrants, many entrants that are trying different business models at any given time. And some will get it right from the start. Some will enter and then find that they can't compete with their business model and they will have to exit because it doesn't work. Some will tweak their business model and then learn from their mistakes. And this is what's happening in the market, with WeWork being the prime example.
I think what's staggering about WeWork is that at one point it was one of the most valuable startups at $47 billion US. So I think the question here is what went wrong. You mentioned some decisions that were taken, being too aggressive, growing too fast. But then maybe Andrew can weigh in as well. What does it say then about the state of office sharing business? Is it a reflection of demand, or is it purely, like you say, almost like an anomaly in the industry?
Yeah. So, although you may hear news of, WeWork's sort of failed IPO since 2019 and sort of the spillover of the restructuring that continues to today, what many people don't realize is that actually on the demand side of it, flexible office and co-working demand continues to grow strongly throughout even at the pre-pandemic period. During the pandemic, there was a big boost with a lot of shift to hybrid working. And what we are seeing on the ground as well is that even post-pandemic, the demand for flexible work actually continues to be even stronger than before. We ourselves are seeing a lot of new types of clients, particularly corporates, multinationals, a lot of big firms. They have realized that it actually has a lot of convenience to add what they call a flexible office component into their real estate strategy. So if you are a big company and you are managing a workforce of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, there is benefit that you fulfill some of your requirements through a co-working space. And I think that's something that the pandemic has sort of forced many companies to experiment on. And I think that's really what they have seen, that, hey, it makes a lot of sense financially from a deployment speed perspective, and just to mix it up in terms of how do they get talent and support their talent across the cities. So I think when you talk about supply and demand, I think what I'm just sharing here is that demand trends are strong, and this is not just in Malaysia, this is a global phenomenon. And I think that's really what is driving the growth of the industry. On the supply side, because of the struggles that WeWork is going through, many other operators who had a WeWork similar kind of model, either they were trying to emulate WeWork or they were trying to, say, get bought out by WeWork. I think those sort of operators are also facing sort of like challenges. But in the big spectrum of things, I would say that just reflects like what Stephanie shared just now. Various business models that people are trying out. Ultimately, I think as the industry goes through its maturity sort of like consolidation cycle, the ones that are more sustainable essentially continue on and grow from there. Restructuring that you see like that WeWork is going through in the US, it's not an uncommon thing. Many US companies go through restructuring, and post-restructuring, they can come out stronger than before. Maybe smaller than what they were, but stronger than before. And I think that is like the beauty of sort of like markets, right? That there's always this adjustment and sort of like coming out. But for us, in Asia, we sort of like did it at the start, right? Something that works at the start, so that we don't have to go through all these pains of.
What are the key lessons as founders? What are the key lessons have you learned from the WeWork saga?
I mean, the WeWork saga tells us the grow at all cost model is probably not favorable, for probably quite some time into the future. And this is not just for co-working spaces, but startups in general. And like for us, we kind of foresaw this, right? As business people, you need to have the skill to foresee things and foresee this. So for us, we decided that from the get-go, starting from even day one that we open our doors, we want to be profitable, we want to be sustainable. So we design our business to be like that from the start, and that makes it very strong because being profitable is different from being consistently profitable. Consistent is the key. That means if you've got 5 or 6 years of profitability, then you've already built your engine strongly in that way that it can move forward very fast, so you can have hyper growth and also profitability very fast, right? If you are just starting to be profitable, then you are still getting your kinks out and still working the models out, and then you're still going to have a couple more years before you can reach to the level where you can grow very fast and still not have those problems. So that's why I want to say, in terms of like, if you take the time to build your engine really well, then profitability and growth is synonymous. That means every outlet that you build is profitable. You take the money that you make from the outlet, you reinvest, that's going to double, triple, and then because of the reinvestment and the compounding growth, then you're going to get a very big value that is real, right? So this is what Warren Buffett always says. Of course, we always forget what he says, and then we do, unsustainable things, and that's just part of the market cycles, up and down. But ultimately, if you want to make real wealth that is sustained and that is huge, like Warren Buffett, very few people are like that, that's what you need. And that's how we think of our business in that sense. I think it's a very good way. Is it the Asian way? I don't know. But certainly, I think having our backgrounds in REIT, having grounded in businesses the way we do things with less capital over here has trained us for that. And of course, because we also have engineering mindset and startup mindset, we want that growth, but we want the best of both worlds. We want profitable and we want high growth. We're not willing to like give up one or the other. We feel like that's kind of a cop-out, and that's how we've built this company. So Malaysian companies can do it, right? In the world stage, we can compete. We can come up with something like this. We should be proud of it, and we should say so, because a lot of our international players, peers in this space have privately told us that, my gosh, you guys done this out of Malaysia, and we are proud of you. And this story, I think, is not just a co-working story, is a Malaysian story.
Okay, well, let's talk about your story then, WORQ. The last time we met was about a year and a half ago, and you have since then doubled the space under management to about 190,000 square feet, 80% revenue growth 2023, and mid-teen net profit margins. So that's really commendable. I mean, despite what the challenging business operating environment. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about what has been driving growth for you. Is it market trend, or is it, like you mentioned, the kind of consistency, sustainable growth model that you are looking at?
How people do ask us sometimes, how do we build this profitability, right, when others are not? So the way that we approach it is actually we take it on a very, what we call a demand-driven approach, right? Any kind of like inventory or desk space that we build out, we make sure that we actually have already pre-secured demand or basically that kind of demand that we can like put out, right? And this year we have opened up about double the inventory, right? We're on track to double up our inventory. And KL Central, which is our latest site that we opened in March this year, within 1 month we were already almost 90% filled, right? Bangsa that you see here, we just opened in August. So it's only been about 2 to 3 months since we opened. We're actually about 75% full now. So this is a very sort of like strong indicator in terms of that there is a lot of underlying demand in the market, and that you just need to be able to piece it well together so that the clients get what they need. And I think although if you look on the Malaysian landscape, there are not many sizable co-working operators for one, and many of the clients, they actually face challenges to get the services that they need. And because we have sort of like that strong financial strength from that we've built over the years, we are able to basically grow with them. And I think that's a big reason why we've been able to deliver such strong numbers this year. Is because when the client comes to us and hey, we need these things, right? We can basically expand with them.
Okay.
Whereas I think a lot of the market may not be in that position.
The market is
moment.
great, demand is great, the entire industry is great, not just in Malaysia, worldwide.
Okay. Is this because hybrid working is here to stay for good now, following up from the pandemic? What's driving this trend?
Yes. So basically, like you say, post-pandemic, even before pandemic, this trend of moving to hybrid working has started. And so the demand is, like say, really robust. But of course, WeWork being one of the many companies not doing well, is just like as the industry growing. And then of course, some will enter, some will exit. But in terms of the trend of co-working, a lot of companies are moving towards this core flex model, where they have X amount of headcount, maybe a lot, and they might have their own HQ still, they're not going to give it up, but they have that flexible component of their headcount that is always changing, that is hard to plan for. Post-COVID, they have to be more agile. So they decide to usually have about 20% of their headcount demand in flex spaces everywhere, so that will complement their core office, and whatever needs to change will be used in a flexible manner by way of co-working spaces. So due to that, due to remote work, due to flex work, the trend has shifted to this new style of working where a lot less ownership of the property and a lot less rental of your own property. Just use flex offices everywhere and have it in a very flexible manner.
Do you think this demand, this trend will stay? And do you see more like companies, like you said, foregoing long-term leases, abandoning office buildings in favor of co-working space in the long term?
It's not so much that they are abandoning long-term leases for flexibility. I think long-term leases still have its purpose, right? It is something that they also have the long-term security because it's a space that they own, right? The difference with a traditional lease and a co-working is that in a traditional lease, typically the occupier, which is the tenant, would have full control over the space. And there is a need for that, especially if you are a bigger firm. But yet there's also this recognition that the business world needs agility nowadays. It's not just startups, even big corporations. If you really look at most big corporations these days, people don't tend to plan on a very long-term planning cycle. In the past, you would plan 3 years, 5 years down the road. But these days, 1 year to year, things will change rapidly. And as a result, I think there is a need for what we call more optionality and flexibility in how they look at things. And that's where I think the traditional lease doesn't cater to that, right? If you were to go out to the market and say, I want to set up a new sort of like project team or a new sort of incubated idea, and you just want to hire like a team of 50 people, like it's not easy for you to just like get a space, renovate it out, and just take a long-term lease, right? Because maybe after a year or two, you might change your plans. And that's where I think there is this need, like Stephanie talked about. Globally, I think most of the real estate consultancies who service the Fortune 500 companies, they are saying that demand is going to settle at about 20 to 30% in the long run. And this shift is what you see is happening because in Malaysia itself, only 1% of our entire office market is offered flexibility in a flexible manner. So you can see that there is a mismatch between where the demand trends are heading, which is 20 to 30%, versus what is offered on the market. And that's what we are sort of like trying to put together. So one thing that we always say is that we are here to basically build the modern infrastructure for offices, like how, because Uber is around, because Grab is around, you can sort of, use these kind of services easily,
So
right?
talk to us about that. How does the modern office workspace or flexible workspace look like? What are your clients telling you? What do they need?
Why is it an infrastructure, right? It's just offices. Well, I mean, for us, if you notice, a lot of our outlets are right next to a train station. And these many outlets in very convenient places all over town will give you this layer of cloud infrastructure office for people to use in a, like they float from office to office sort of manner. And this infrastructure is very important for companies to come inside, plug in, and say, you know, whenever I need to use it, it's there. It's not mine. I don't own this infrastructure, but if I need to put some headcount, I'm just going to use 5 headcount. Tomorrow we use 10, I'm just going to use 10 headcount. Very much like Amazon Web Services, where you don't have to maintain your own server or buy your own server. You just use their server by amount of byte size by byte size. So when people come inside and use this infrastructure, then they start to be serviced in many ways. A company will need all kinds of services, HR services, administrative services, you know, legal services. And in that infrastructure, they can obtain this one-stop business hub. Why are we on train stations? Because we are augmenting the transportation infrastructure. Our train lines are great, right? A lot of people are using it, but we would like more people to use it, to, if possible, use as little of their cars as they can. If you have a whole network of offices right next to train stations, then you can come to work by way of, maybe you want to come to work by car, but if you want to go to another location to have a meeting, or you want to meet someone else somewhere, you can choose to use the train, and then you can come back to your office and drive home, or you can just hop to all the other outlets in your cars. We need to do this for our infrastructure of transportation, because we need to make the train lines much more user-friendly and much more increase the utilization of the train. If the train becomes very convenient to use, if we go there, we can pay our bills. We go there, we can get a meal. We can go there, we can work. We go there, we can drop our kids off a kindergarten, all there on the train station. Then everybody will be using the train station. And then we try to get as many cars off the road as possible, so that we can increase the usage of public transportation that is shared, reduce the carbon footprint. But you can only do this if you make it convenient and easy for people to use. We can appeal to their sense of righteousness in terms of carbon footprint, but the best way is saying, you know what, you don't even have to think about that. It is just a better way and nicer way to go to work, and therefore everybody just naturally wants to use it.
So most of your outlets or your space are located at
train stations.
Train stations. All of it,
Yeah.
okay.
So we have seven sites in Klang Valley, and they're all basically
Right
connected
next to the
directly
train.
next to the train station. So the moment you walk out, you can get into our
So accessibility is one, and flexibility, which you mentioned earlier, flexibility of the services offered to clients. I do wonder, because you started back in 2017, this was way before the pandemic, what has changed in terms of the customers' needs, in terms of preferences, co-working spaces? How do they look like? How do you foresee them changing in the future?
Yeah. When we started, a big part of what we offered was already being highly valued by startups. So back when we started TTDI Tamantun, almost 90% of our clientele were SMEs and startups.
Okay.
So this include your tech startups, but it also included a lot of white-collar SMEs, right? All the way from architects to accountants to marketing and media. So I think all these people just found that, hey, rather than getting a small office to myself, like in a Soho or shop lot, I could actually, for the same money that I put there, I can come to a co-working space and get services from the whole team, and on top of that, get to engage with the community. So the community offering was what started us, and it continues to be a very big part of what we do. But I think what has changed in the past few years is that, like what I was sharing, a lot of corporations have sort of like came into the game. Today itself, corporations or enterprises makes up almost 70% of our demand.
Right.
So, but personally, I see that both sides will continue to grow rapidly, and it's a good thing for us, right? In the sense that more people are
bigger.
starting to basically recognize that, hey, there is a very important and good need for agility and flexibility. And I think that trend, I don't imagine it's basically it's here to stay, right? I think it's something that more and more people are using, and it's cost effective. I think that's the main thing.
And you have big plans to grow your area to about 500,000 square feet, 450,000 by 2025. And you recently had a successful fundraising. Tell us about the plans to grow. What's in the near future? What can we expect from WORQ?
Yeah. So this year itself, we've gotten about 100,000 square feet of new expansion, so doubling up our space. With the latest fundraising that we have completed, our plan is to deploy about 100 to 150,000 square feet in the next 2 years. That will take us to the 450,000 square feet target.
And are you still looking around Klang Valley, or are you expanding out of the city?
I think most of all options are on the table, but Klang Valley is great for us because it's a very low risk expansion, and there's a lot of locations still available in Klang Valley for us to grow into. The demand is still very big that we haven't fulfilled.
Right.
So I would say that a bulk of it will be in Klang Valley just because of the fact that there's still so much to fulfill. And then we are looking at the other cities as well. Penang and Johor, of course, but the other cities that are also second, third in terms of population size, like Malacca, Ipoh, Kuantan, all these cities have a possibility for us to go inside. As long as there's economic activity, as long as there's catchment, our product can fulfill this market and go to the rest of Malaysia, regardless of the size. We don't have to be in downtown. If you notice, we're in suburbs. We started off in the suburbs, and we design our product so that it's very cost effective, it's very friendly for the market to adopt, and that we can go to the smaller towns and the smaller cities to service them there as well.
Okay. Now I want to talk a bit about, from the investor's point of view, it's quite interesting to note that one of your major investors in the latest fundraising round was actually a well-known property developer, the Masing Group. Could you shed light on the economics behind why traditional real estate players are turning to working with co-working spaces?
So Masing's family office invested in us, the founders of Masing. And I think for them it's a very obvious thing to come into because they are familiar with the market. They know, the nitty-gritty about the real estate industry. And they obviously are a very successful top in line in their industry of property. So they have seen what we have done over the years and they like it. And it's not just Masing, right? This outlet that you see around here is a collaboration with Yeow REIT, whereby though they did not invest into our parent company, they actually worked with us in terms of a strategic partnership on this location. And so we, co-own this together, and we basically run the space and help them bring a lot of the content, a lot of the events that we run, and a lot of vibrancy into this space, as well as bring in the tenants that they may originally not have access to, the smaller companies, the smaller headcounts. We get it in here for them, and we manage all of that. And they are investing into this style of strategic partnership, and we're having talks with all the other landlords in town as well. So they see the value because not only do we increase their rental yield on the space by bringing more services to the tenants, and therefore we can charge a little bit more and plow some back to the landlords, but at the same time we bring a lot of vibrancy into the building and brand, because we run a lot of community activities, and this space becomes the local rukun tetangga for the businesses. So if businesses come here, they know they can meet and find opportunities and collaborate, and people start to say, oh, listen, if you need to meet such and such kinds of business, go to this building. If you need these other kinds, you go to the other location of work. So that's the brand of that building.
Well, I see the value, but then again, these real estate developers are capable of replicating the same model that a company like WORQ is offering. Do you see this dynamic happening in the market right now? Are there concerns that this would happen and would impact your business?
They are very good at building buildings and managing it and the brick and mortar of it. But in order to bring all the content, all the community, to manage many small little companies, it's not something that they've traditionally done. Even REITs, they have big tenants. They take up at least one floor. And for us, we do more than that. Right? The whole entire service line is done by us. Once you come inside, we service the company. The company's success is our success. So we actually partner with the real estate developer or real estate landlord to provide this to their tenants. They may not want to focus on that because their team is very focused on building and managing. And so for us, you know, like we are the second layer, and we are the bridge between them and the users.
Yeah, I think just adding on to what Stephanie shared there, I think if you look at most property development groups in Malaysia, especially all the large ones, the bread and butter for the bulk of them is actually property development. So that means actually getting the land, planning out the master concept, and basically building and selling it to the market. So because that is their core, there is still a gap in the market in terms of what we call the content and the activation. And that's why you see many developers, whether you're building residential, whether you're building shopping malls, whether you're building offices, they always need certain kind of content to activate their development. So that would be like, if you open a shopping mall, you probably want to get a big grocer in, get a cinema in. So these are kind of like what they call your anchor tenants to build content. And nowadays, if you notice, if you look at township developments or office developments, what are the things that you need to be able to make it an attractive service, right? Because if it's just empty floors that you're building, that is actually pretty widely available in Malaysia, right? There's real estate infrastructure everywhere. But now the question is there content inside to let the occupants really consume it in an enjoyable manner, in a convenient manner? And I think that's where our role comes in to actually bridge that gap. Because for most developers, I think they are already making, I would say, very healthy profits from the development side of it. Many of them would rather actually work with partners, right? They wouldn't want to like start their own, you know, like a hospital brand or gym brand. Like, even though it is necessary, right? Every township developer knows that you need a good school, but you don't want to build a school, right? You kind of partner with a good school to bring in. And that's really like what we see with the co-working space industry, because many of them who have tried, they realize that there's a lot of nuances that goes into it, and that it may not really be what they want to do themselves, but yet, you know, just by working with us, they can actually get that kind of benefit. So I think, yeah, that's really where we are.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your plans and also talking to us a bit about, you know, the fallout from WeWork and the lessons that we can learn from it. So thank you so much, Stephanie and Andrew, for spending some time to talk to me about it. You've been watching AWANI Review. I'm Cynthia Ng. We'll see you next time.